This video I want to talk about an upcoming overhaul to how travel works in the game. Currently, in the live version, you move around, you get hungry, and at a certain point you have to enter a tile and eat, otherwise you'll be taking starvation damage. And that system's okay. It's a little lackluster. But it does provide some limitations, so players couldn't just walk all over the map. But it wasn't quite right. It wasn't creating the experiences that I wanted to create with travel, where that feeling of going on a journey, that feeling of going on an adventure, of packing your stuff and making a big epic trip across the world, or walking for days and becoming desperate and managing to find a hamlet or some trading hub and walking in, you're like almost dead, and you arrive and they have food and water and a place to rest, and that kind of experience of what I think travel should be in a fantasy world. Setting a goal, trying to get there, and then encountering things along the way. Not just like an annoying mechanic or thing to deal with, but something that feels connected to the world. And the question was how to create that experience. And the hunger mechanic wasn't really doing that, which leads me to the upcoming changes. If you look here at the bottom, you'll see a new UI component. This is travel weariness. Now, travel weariness is a number that goes up as you move. So instead of getting hungry, your weariness is slowly going up. Here I'm like very high. I'm at like 92. And this orb goes from green to red. That might change when this UI actually gets some polish. This is just early art. And as you travel, you're getting more and more weary. And if your weary gets to a max, well, you become exhausted, pass out, and a random negative event happens. It's right here. You pass out from exhaustion, waking up several hours later. So here I didn't have much loot, and the game is kind of generous. We didn't get a horrible event. We just woke up in a nearby dungeon. So if you were playing this, you'd have to clear your way out of this dungeon. Since I have cheats on, we can just leave. So I passed out from all that weariness of travel. I woke up in a dungeon a few tiles away, and I had to fight my way out. And there's a set of events that can happen. They're pretty punishing. They're quite punishing. Passing out is almost like a mini death, so it needs to be punishing. You can lose your items, not your equipped gear, but you can lose some of your food. You can wake up and your gold is stolen. You can be attacked by a wild animal. You could have your gear spread out. There's a whole, your gear spread out through the dungeon. You have to find it. There's a set of events to make sure, players don't want to be passing out. Now, as for this weariness mechanic, there are ways to mitigate it, which is road tiles. Your weariness doesn't go up as much. You get resistance. You get some resistance from your player level, and just like natural resistance. And that was really important because I really wanted the game to open up as the player gets levels and plays more. So there's this feeling of, it's the same thing on like a hero's journey where the character is in their little hometown, and when they get stronger, they're ready to go on a trek far away. But at first, I really wanted the player to feel almost stuck, like they're near the starter town and they can't travel that far. But just naturally, as they progress, this weariness will become less of a problem. One way to think of it, and this is what kept coming to mind as I was working on this, is like fuel, almost. So here's a screenshot of a game I loved when I was younger, which is Urquan Masters. And there's a lot of these space games where you have to fill up fuel. So here you've got like 20 fuel, and you put on these modules in your ship and you get more fuel. And that's kind of like the limiting factor that keeps you in a star system or keeps you in one area of the game. It makes it so you're progressing at a reasonable rate. Because you only have so much fuel, you're capped. And the funny thing is, sometimes with mechanics, you can find a game element that matches like the mechanic you want. So if you want to limit how far someone can move in a spaceship game, you just go fuel. But for a role-playing game, you don't have fuel. Like, it's a player. Like, it doesn't make any sense the player has fuel. So the options were energy or some form of getting tired. But since getting tired doesn't make sense if you're walking for days, I went with travel weariness. And the idea is, your body is getting like the elements, they're getting to you. You're getting, maybe you can imagine like a storm. You're like soaked to the bone. Your clothes are weary. You need to rest. And that also keeps it distinct from your energy, because energy was already a concept in the game which is tied to abilities. So we couldn't reuse energy. That would be confusing. It's like your travel energy versus your combat energy. And that was basically the process for arriving at this weariness. Okay, but I haven't fully explained it yet, because you're probably wondering, how do you mitigate weariness? Like, what happens? The player just walks a certain distance and they pass out. What are they supposed to do? And that's where I am getting back to what I was talking about earlier, which was good mechanics integrate with other mechanics. They form a connection with the game. They don't sit on top of the game like some. And I think that's a lot of where annoyance comes. It's when some blocker is put into a game and it's just like a thing you have to click. It doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't link to the overall experience. And with this travel weariness, I was really trying to do that. So if we go, here's one way we can see that. If we trade the innkeeper here, he now sells elderberry wine. So this is a wine that'll, it's almost like a get out of jail free card. It's expensive, but you can put it in your inventory. And then if you're about to have way too much weariness, you want to move a few more tiles, this reduces weariness by 15%. So buying a consumable is one way. Another item, which I'm really excited about, is where I'm looking for a general store. Most general stores now sell this new item, which is the campsite kit. Oh, I had two on me already. Doesn't have an icon yet. And this is the first placeable object in the game. So here we are. You're in the wilderness. If your weariness is really high, you can also check it here on this panel. Travel weariness. What you can do is you can place a campsite kit. Boom. Now you've got a bed. You've got storage. You've got cooking. And you have basically a little base of operations. And if this was a space game, one way you could think of this is it's like you created a space station hub where you can stop and refuel. Well, here you can set up a little base of operations. And so this will then become like a hub where the player can rest and remove their weariness and then keep going on their travel. And because these are heavy and expensive, you can't put them everywhere. So I'm almost imagining the player creating waypoints as the map extends and letting them go further and further. So even if you're not a high level and you want to travel, you do have options. You can find a bed. You can look for a bed in a dungeon. You can lug around a campsite kit or try to craft one through the survival skill. You can get elderberry wine. Or if you're desperate, you can even look for berries on your map. Elderberries also reduce a small amount. Looks like there's no berry bushes here. And that's another desperation option. I wanted a desperation option. If you wanted to go click everywhere, you could keep harvesting and get elderberries, which reduces it by 5%. All these numbers, I think, will require some balancing. And that's going to be the real trick of this, is to not make it too annoying, but to let it be a limitation that is like encouraging the player's growth and makes the progression exciting and makes moving around the world interesting, having to deal with this weariness stat. So that if you find like a hunter's cabin somewhere in the forest, that's really exciting for you. Here I'll show some of the design document. I guess we don't have to go through the whole thing. There's other parts to this. Part of it is redoing the map to have more of a sense of regions and provinces, and I think that's where the game is going to go, is creating distinct provinces or even biomes. Like I can imagine a huge desert, and because that'll add a reason to travel. You want to get to the desert area, you want to get to the volcano area, you want to get to a new town hub. And as part of that, I'm also imagining like the player picks a city, and that's going to become very important. Whether it's an area where you've set up a bunch of those camps, and those are going to be your base of operations. You don't want to deal with the towns. Or if you do, or you're doing a playthrough with a good reputation with the towns, you have the option of selecting the town, and you're going to want to select a good one because the shops matter, the trainers that are in there are going to matter, different services in all the towns, and long term, I think the type of towns is going to be really important. So I can imagine players almost settling, maybe doing missions in that area for a while, and then when they're ready, trying to find a new base, maybe taking some grand journey. And this is another way I think this weariness isn't going to be a huge problem for players, is it's pretty easy to sleep if you're just like doing all these little trips and missions in an area. It's really for when you take a big trip, when you want to go find the Wizard's Tower. Suddenly you got to deal with, there's actually a mechanic behind traveling. And it's not shared with food, which food was more like a combat mechanic. So now it has its own mechanic. And it also led to a rework of the travel skill, which was kind of not that good before. It didn't offer much. It was like, eh. And now, though, it has travel fortitude, which basically adds a huge amount of resistance to that weariness. So if you are early game and you really want to move around the map and not be punished, you have this option to start getting points in Traveler's Vigilance. And I think that's what lets a mechanic, like I was saying earlier, fit into the game well. Is we've got interaction with food, we've got interaction with objects, something on the map. It's not just a UI thing. So you're not looking at a spreadsheet, you've got something on the map. We interaction with the survival skill, which can now craft campsite kits. We've got interaction with like harvesting items to reduce your weariness, and with the bed. So here, I didn't really show this before. Yeah, so before when you slept, you just would level up. Now we have two options, where a rest is just a very quick, you click this, weariness leaves your body. Very quick, and then you lose all weariness. And I imagine early game, that's all players will have to do. They'll come to town and they click the bed. Or even less than that, because I actually was worried it would be too clicky, annoying to click find a bed all the time, is if you're in town, your weariness just slowly goes down as you move. So you can just, it says here, travel weariness is reduced by spending time in friendly towns. So you can just go to 2 shops and it's gone. Or if you have a lot and you want to go fast, you can click this. And this little menu here, again, I'm really thinking how to make it fast. 1 click. Click, click, if you do want to use it. And keeping the deep sleep mechanic, or keeping the level up mechanic, which was sleeping used to be the way to level up. And I didn't want to replace that with just remove weariness, so this is my solution to that. Quick rest to remove weariness, deep sleep to remove it, and also get some levels. So yeah, a lot is going into this, and a lot of thought and planning. There is some concern, though. And, like, the first thing is, look at this tooltip. Like, new players are going to look at this. This is a lot of text. A lot of players are not going to want to read this. They're going to look at this, going to see all these numbers, and go, oh my goodness, I don't want to learn this. And the first time you enter the world map, you've got to learn faction influence, you got to learn wilderness danger, you got to learn that you can explore, you got to learn about time, and now this huge mechanic. So that's a concern I have, is teaching it. You don't want too much stuff on the screen all at once. And you can't, like, with other complex mechanics, you can kind of hide them. And I've done that in some ways with workbenches. Here, if we go, like, cooking, you don't have to see cooking unless you click cooking. And then you unlock recipes, and now all this stuff is there. But with weariness, it's kind of right in your face. And there's some complexity. Players are going to have to learn to deal with it. The good thing about it, though, is it's not too punishing. If you conk out early, you don't have any items to lose. It doesn't really matter. You can just load your save. So I think, like, that might just be a way to learn. You just walk until you pass out. And then the player will go, okay, I passed out. And they'll see what happens, and they'll learn. And they'll start to look for ways to mitigate that. As part of this, too, traveling now increases... just traveling the map gives you slight travel XP, so that skill is a little more balanced. You can get some levels in it without just putting your very valuable wisdom points in it. And yeah, I guess it's hard to say exactly what the experience is going to be. It's hard to say if it's going to create that feeling of journeying, which I really want to. If it doesn't work, I'll just remove it or tweak it or balance it. We'll see what happens. Maybe players will hate it. Some players hate limitations, but I think there really had to be something that just made moving on the map matter. Like, I really want a player thinking, okay, like, which way do I go? How far is it? Planning a route, and like seeing a town and being like, oh my goodness, there's a town. and like traveling on the roads. You see the roads give you resistance, and just creating those experiences. Now that's the hope, that's the desire. Probably it'll take some tweaking, but I mean, it is early access, so if there ever was a time to flip the game on its head, it's now. The update should be out soon, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video after, looking at how players respond and considering some other ways to tweak and balance it. But I think it's gonna be good, and I am kind of excited to see how players respond. I guess that's it for today. Thanks for watching.